Welcome to today's episode. We have an exciting guest joining us, the CEO of MCG Talents, Justin McGuire, a successful entrepreneur in the recruitment industry. Justin's company, MCG Talents, has a strong presence in Middle East and Asia. Let's jump in and hear more about Justin and his journey from communication and consulting to being a multi-million-dollar CEO. So what initially inspired you to start MCG Talents?
Right. What initially inspired me to start the business? What inspired me to start the business was a poor experience as a candidate. Okay. So what I mean by that was I used to work in advertising and creative and digital for 7 years. And when I was looking for a job, and I was the last job I had in agency world was in digital content. When I was looking for a job, I couldn't find a recruiter that understood what I did. And then combine that with the fact that I'd also met a couple of people who worked in recruitment and they were doing really, very well. And I was a bit undecided if I wanted to go back into agency world. So I decided to fuse everything, go into recruitment, go into use my background and experience in the comms and digital world and basically go in and set up a division for a business. So I did that in London, first of all. And I did that for nearly just under 2 years. And then I got offered a job in Dubai, having never been here before. And I moved out when Dubai was saying that it wasn't going to get hit by the recession or anything like that. And I moved, literally as I landed, all the cars started to get dumped here from the recession. So unfortunately, my job got basically binned after 2 weeks of being here. And so I was here with 2 years of recruitment experience, like 7 years of advertising creative agency experience, and didn't have a job. And thought, well, you know what? Why don't I, as things start to improve here, and Abu Dhabi flicked Dubai quite a bit of money, and things were starting to rapidly improve. I thought, well, why don't I just set up my own enterprise here? I'll be the first person here to do similar thing what I did in the UK, and that's how I did it. So I sort of fell into everything really. Mm. And what I didn't tell you in the middle of that is I lived in Latin America for a year. I lived in Honduras as well, and that was quite a wild place to live. You know, I had a gun put to my head, and it was just it's got the second highest murder rate in the world, right?
Okay.
And I thought, if I could do a year of living in Honduras, Dubai's going to be a breeze, man. And so when I got offered the job to come to Dubai, I wasn't even bothered about the fact that I'd never been to the Middle East before. I thought, it's if I can do that, I can do anything. So that they always say that it's the butterfly effect, right?
Yeah.
Had I not gone to Honduras and experienced that and decided to leave advertising, I wouldn't have then fallen into recruitment. I wouldn't have chosen to go to Dubai had I not done a year in Honduras, because I felt very brave that I could just go and make decisions like that now. And I probably wouldn't have done a lot of the things that I've done ever since then because of that initial bravery that I picked up from that year in Honduras. I actually take that moment that I decided to leave agency world and move to Honduras as the starting point for the biggest change in my life ever, because everything really changed when I resigned and made that decision.
That's so cool. So, through opening MCG and all of that, was there any big chance that you faced, something that you can say that could have stopped me from pursuing this dream?
Yeah, I've nearly gone bust twice. That's probably going to put you off. You know, that's going to make you go, wow, what am I doing? So the first 5 years, I think it was about 5 years, so 12. Yeah, first 5 years was a wonderful experience because I'd set up the business here. I had first mover advantage. There wasn't really many competition here at all, and the markets here were going gangbusters. So we did great, and I was a very young entrepreneur then, and I thought naively that everything I touched would turn to gold. You know, I was like, wow. You know, I'm such a natural at this. And then I got a rude awakening in 2016 because in my stupidity, I decided to use all the money that I'd made to open a business in London, open a learning and development company here, invest into my wife's technology company, diversity inclusion business, and I opened up a business in Hong Kong. And also, I can't believe I did this now. I say it's so stupid. I also opened up an HR and finance recruitment business in Dubai as well, all at the same time, whilst trying to run the main business. Now, don't know quite what I was thinking, but I obviously, you know, I obviously spread myself a bit thin, right? And I ended up being very average at running all those. Combine that with the fact that I don't know if you'll recall, because you're probably don't remember this, but the oil price collapsed that year from about $100 a barrel to about $25 a barrel. It was about $25 a barrel, wasn't it? So that meant most of the governments here who relied on oil, the oil price as their main revenue generator, lost a lot of their money, which meant the economy absolutely nosedived. So the year I spent the most money, oh, and by the way, that year as well, I bought a house and my son was born. It all happened around about, I think it was around about May, June, July. Within this 3-month period, everything, all the crunch happened. And we lost, our main business lost about 80% of its job orders in as well, but everything went on hold. And I had, gosh, I think in Dubai we had, must have been around 40 staff, close to 40. Combine all those things together, I think it was close to 40. And then I obviously had the people in Asia and I had the people in London then. And our main revenue stream just got cut and I'd spent all the money. So it was a time. Oh, and I yeah. And Brexit, I lost £100,000 in the Brexit boat, in the currency conversion. I'd saved all my personal money in sterling. And of course I had to send it out here to buy the house, which is pegged to the dollar. And some wise owls in the UK decided to vote out of the EU and devalued the pound, and meant that my money dropped by nearly £100,000 as well. So as you can imagine, that was quite a tough year. But I look back on it now, I can smile, can't I? So you came out of that thinking, if this can't take me down, you feel somewhat indestructible once you get over it, actually. So, and I, in a weird and slightly psychotic way, I'm quite grateful for it, because the thick layers of skin you developed from going through something like that means that when COVID came along, I was actually quite relaxed, which is because I said to everyone, oh, this can't be worse than what I went through in 2016. And I'll give it, to be fair, it gave it a good run at one point. It was pretty bad. I remember having a conversation with Adam, my business partner, and suggesting to him that we just close everything at one point. Because I don't know if you remember this, but no one had ever seen anything like this before in the world, right? And when you run a recruitment business that relies on a positive economy, it relies on momentum, job, people create jobs when the economy's moving forward, when people think there's growth in the market. Well, when a pandemic comes along, people think everyone's going to die. People think the zombie apocalypse is about to arrive on our doorstep. They stop everything naturally. So everything for about 2 months, our entire job book ceased to exist. But I actually managed to stop all our bills from existing. So, because everyone was quite open, like everyone just freezed everything. You spoke to your energy supply, you spoke to your landlord, you spoke like, I don't know what's going to happen here. So everyone was kind of gave you a period of a grace period. And so we didn't really lose any money. Everything just paused. And I remember having a conversation with Adam saying, look, why don't we just close everything for 6 months and just see what happens? And weirdly enough, like month 3, it started to go again. Things started to, move. It actually was a real V-shaped recovery. And we were, I had all my staff were working from all over. I mean, I was in Singapore at the time. Most of our staff in Singapore were expats. There was like 2 Singaporeans there and me. I let all the expats go back to the UK. They didn't know if they were going to see their families again. They were worried, so they went back. And then Adam was in Hong Kong with a few people. And then here in Dubai, memory serves me correctly, it was a really hard, horrible lockdown, wasn't it? It was a short one, but it was horrible and hard. So we, and here our job order really nosedived, but we put people on like a furlough scheme, which is, so we put them on pause for a bit. But we kept a couple of people working, and they started getting so busy they had to bring everyone back. So it was a bizarre. For me, it was nothing like as bad. It was weird to live in it, and super strange to be living as locked in a house. But everything outside of that seemed to be operating, and I found it from a business perspective a lot easier to handle than than the 2016. But that's because I'd had practice, right? I
The
knew,
2016.
I knew what was coming. It's like I'd written the game plan, and we just put that back into practice now. I think you naturally, if you run when you're responsible for people, when you have salaries and bills to pay and people to look after, you always harbor some fear within you. But I use that fear to kind of inspire me. I'm one of those entrepreneurs that is driven by fear, and in that I can put that completely back to by being a child. So my father was a very successful guy, but then he lost all his money. So I had this really weird experience when I grew up, being I went to a very nice private school, but my mum was on benefits. Now, what that means in the UK is that she's government supported, right? And we had a government supported house, and so it was, all my friends were in these posh cars and lived in beautiful houses and stuff like that. And my dad wasn't around; he'd gone by then, and my mum lived in like a council house. So it was a real bizarre. Like I'd go to the school every day because my father managed to pay up front for it. Then because I was quite good at sport, they decided to keep me on. So they gave me a scholarship. So I did 5 years in this beautiful school with all these wealthy people, completely skinned. So I had lived this weird life. And I think when you've got that and you see your parents lose money, you're always afraid that it might happen to you. So I've always had that running within me. And when that happened in 2016, my first instinct was I for like a nanosecond, I thought I'm doing the same as my father again. I've done it. I've blown it. I can't believe it. And that little feeling
Kind of pushed you.
Yeah, in a weird psychotic way, and I use it to drive me. And I say to a lot of people, if you've got a bit of anxiety about it, if you're not nervous when you go into work, then I think you're going to get complacent. You're not going to give something your all. You've got to have that anxiety dial, not dialed up too much, but just have it tweaked a little bit, because if you're not on edge, I don't think you're at your best. And being on edge, I think, keeps you ahead of the competition. Does that make sense?
No, it totally does.
Yeah.
So would you say you could have done something differently with MCG, or the way you handled things in general?
I look back and think I could have done a lot of things different. You sort of look back and go, wow, why did I do that? I look back on the structure we had. I would never do that again. The opening up all those different businesses at the same time. What the hell was I thinking? I would never do that again. So lots of things I wouldn't do again, but in the same breath, I wouldn't have learned any lessons that I've learned had I not done that as well. So I look back on the past things I've done in business now, and I'm grateful for what's happened. I'm still standing. I can't say I haven't got a nice life. I've got, a beautiful family, and we get to go around the world and stuff. So it's worked out all right, but it does feel incredibly painful when things go wrong at the time. But you climb your way back up. Someone somewhere in my genes or family pool has given me this insane resilience. I know I've got it. Like I can bounce back. I don't quite know who gave it to me, and I'm very grateful that they did. But it's very hard to take me down. It's very hard to. I saw it in sport. I always kept going. I kept coming back, and I've managed to transfer it to my business life as well. So it's I heard someone say, and I'm a guy called Alex Hormozy, and I follow a lot of what he says. But he said that you can never beat someone who doesn't quit. And it's completely true, right? If you never stop, if you never quit, well, you're always going to win, aren't you? And in business, it's not like someone comes along like in the Olympics and gives you a gold medal and says, well done, congratulations, you have survived. You've just got to stay in business. And you stay in business by never quitting and evolving and getting better and better and learning from what you've done.
Okay. So say you would describe yourself back then and now. We want like 3 words. So 3 words for who you were before MCG and who you are now.
Yeah, I think I was fearless, absolutely fearless, naive, and very loud.
Loud?
Yeah, because I think you have to be loud when you stood up on your own. You've got to be, I broadcast from the hilltops. As you know, I was a one-man band in a place where, you know, I knew that the only way I could get people working with me is if I was loud and used as many different tactics as I'd learned from my Marcoms days and recruitment days to try and get in front of people. So I literally went, you know, I got all LinkedIn. They used to test products on me because I used to use them so much. I used to keep seeing, everyone used to say to me, Justin, we see you all the time on LinkedIn, because no one back in 2010 was using it like they're using it now, like a social media platform. Well, I thought, this is this free tool. I can, you know, it seems obvious now, right? There's this free tool. I could just broadcast who we are. I know I was all over Facebook. That was pretty good back then. I took the first bit of money we made. I took out a big double page ad in Campaign magazine, right? Now, Campaign magazine is like, if you work in advertising or marketing, this was the Bible, right? No recruitment company had ever put a big ad in in Campaign magazine. So I slapped a big ad in it, you know, and I used money that we made straight into that. And what people didn't realize was, for 2 years, it was just me on my own. But because I projected this image of being big and bold and loud, people assumed that I was a main player, and I wasn't going to correct them. I wasn't going to say, oh no, I'm a one-man band. I was going to, work my hardest. And at those days, I was working between London and Dubai. And so my wife, Helen, would say that she would always know where my office was, because I had an office in the UK then. It'd be the only one with the lights on. And, when she'd go past in the bus going home, mine would be just, this office. I'm telling you, it was about the size of where we are now, and the best bit about that office, that people, again, it played into my part. People thought I was bigger than what I was. Underneath me was a legal firm. They were an African legal firm. I emphasize the point that they're an African legal firm because they had incredibly loud voices. Like I've got a couple of friends from Nigeria, and they really shout at each other even when they're talking. And the floorboards were this thick. Everyone thought I was in this big buzzy office. It was my neighbours underneath. I used to go down and say to them, "Thank you, thanks for your loud conversation." They used to laugh and give me some weird food, which was lovely. But no, that was I sort of don't know where I went with that, but that's the loud part. Fearless, because I think when you're younger and you start, you don't know what you don't know, right? So I think if I'd have known that a lot of people would have said no to me, if I'd have known that some people would laugh in my face, I think, would I have perhaps done some things I did? Maybe not, but you are pretty fearless then, and you attack. So yeah, I think that was another trend. What was the other one I said? I can't remember now. Naive. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the list goes on. Silly things I did then. I'm showing you the bits that worked. There's a heck of a lot of things that don't work, and I assume some of them are quite pointless because I don't really remember them.
Well, we've had this talk last time. I remember you were talking about how, as an entrepreneur, you need to do like 100 things, and 99 of them would fail.
Yeah.
But like one of them would work, and I feel like more than one of them worked for you.
Well, yeah, because I tried, 399 times, not just 99 times, right? You've got to. It's the same with anything in life. Like I'm sure when you met a boy or a girlfriend and you take them home to your parents and then you break up and they go, oh, they weren't. I always knew they weren't right for you. Or there's always your friends that will say to you, oh no, they're not right for you, or something like that. But they're not always going to be right. Like they stop saying they're right 99% of the time, except for that one time they're wrong. And that's the person you end up marrying, and that's life. You're always gonna. There's so many different ways of looking at it. You're never going to know anything until you give it a go, right? And you'll learn from that experience, and you move on to the next one, and it'll take you closer to something that will work.
So, 3 words, describe yourself now.
Oh God. I still say I'm quite loud, to be fair. I'm quite decisive now. I think I lock in on an idea now and I go with it. Would you say that's fair? Yeah. It's interesting. You have to sort of ask other people who work with you. I'd still say I'm as entrepreneurial, and as I love business. I love ideas. I love being creative. I think I'm a creative person. I'm a decisive person. I'm mature because I'm bloody older. I think I'm a kinder person actually now than I was before. I think in my early days of being a boss, I think I thought you needed to rule by fear a bit. And that was because when you set up a business, or when you set up a business, the only real thing you've got to base your business on is the previous companies you've worked for, right? And the previous bosses and mentors that you've had. So what you end up doing at the beginning in a weird sort of way is you end up at the beginning just being a bit like them. And my first boss, he was, I think it's fair to say at times, he was a real tyrant. He ruled a bit by fear and was a bit scared of him. He didn't want to get in late. He thought if he had a go at you, shit, that's it. That business, that he's going to get rid of you. And you'd seen like he'd lost his temper a few times. So I think I had a little bit him and me. And then the second company I worked for in London, where I learned how to become a recruiter, they were super, it was like being back at school. They were super regimented. If I didn't shave, they had to go at you. If your knot in your tie wasn't correct, you couldn't go to meetings. And again, the guy who ran it, you could hear him shouting sometimes. So I'd sort of had a bit of that in me, and I was militant about timings, and I came down pretty hard on people. And I think I was a kind of a reskinned version of them when I first started. And I probably wasn't as patient as I am now with people. I probably didn't take into consideration people who had families and stuff. A lot of things that you now think about. So I think I'm a nicer person to do business. And I've realized that you actually get the best out of your staff by understanding them. That you get the best out of your staff by understanding what they want in life, not getting them to do what you want. Right. And that's a completely different mindset. And I think a lot of people go into business, and when they run a company of anything more than 10 people, they try and get everyone to do what they want without taking any time or consideration to understand what drives that individual. It sounds like common sense really now, doesn't it? But if you find out what motivates someone and you create a role around them that is in line with what their values, ambitions, hopes and dreams are, well, of course they're going to work harder for you, because it completely aligns with them. And it's something I'm surprised so many people don't think about or understand. And I definitely never thought about that in the early days. So yeah, I think I hire a bit better now than I did before. God, certainly when I look back on some of the people that have gone through our office, I would certainly say that I've had business partnerships that I probably would have never done now if I look back on it. That's something I've learned. I've gone into business with, so my wife's actually one of those, and fortunately that worked out pretty well. Adam in Hong Kong, that's worked out pretty well. But I've had some disastrous relationships as well with people. I did a partnership for our firm that was a catastrophic disaster, is no other way of saying it. Where I fused our business with a company in Europe and America and Australia, and realized then COVID happened in the middle of all that, and realized that they weren't the right match for us. And I opened up a learning development company with an old client who I thought on the face of it, I didn't get to know him as well as I should have done. And on the face of it, he looked like a lovely guy, but he was a bit naughty in other areas, and we weren't the right match, and his values and my values weren't aligned. And so I'd be very careful who I ever go into business with again. And I make sure I know them really well and understand what drives them and what their values are. I think your values have to align with someone if you're going to go into business with them, and you need to think long and hard about that, because it's a big commitment.
So I imagine your vision for MCG has evolved over time. So do you think the way you had it planned out from the beginning, is it still the same way as it is now?
No, it's so there's yes and no. Right, there you go, and I'll explain why. So the structure in which I run the business now, that has evolved over time. So I think if you think about like nearly 15 years ago when I set the business up, AI, no one had a clue what that was. The way we use tools and technology now, completely different. The way you go and just for recruitment, how much is done on video now, completely different, right? Podcasting, YouTube, stuff that you can learn online. There wasn't none of those playbooks there then. So that's the technology and systems and everything like that's completely changed. And your business has to evolve with that. I would never, if you had asked me 15 years ago, will I hire someone in Philippines and Sri Lanka to work for our business? I'd have thought you were absolutely mad, you know? And that I think COVID played a big part in understanding the global workforce. So lots of things have happened in the world. Lot of technology has changed. So you've adapted, you change you adapt your business to what's going on in the world. I still, you know, when I set the business up, I thought I want us to be a well-known, the well-known player in a marketing, communication, digital space for what we do in the Middle East and Asia. I still completely stand by that. We are, and I think we are very well known in the Middle East and Asia for what we do. I'd love, you know, I still want to grow the business. I took a license in Saudi Arabia. We're talking about hopefully down the track doing something in Japan. So those ambitions of having that they're still there. Just the way I'm building the business and the type of team I have and the technology I'm using doing it, that's completely changed. What we've also, done is trying to build out a different platform that comes from the recruitment business as well. So the training business that we've created on the back of it, that's really exciting. That's completely new. That's something that I think you only think about that you're capable and able to do after 14 years and 20 years of work experience, right? You don't think, when you start off in business, the only thing you think about is staying in business and keeping things going. Now you go from being the new business to now I'm very quickly one of the older hats in the game, right? So that's evolved with it. So that's a real mixed answer to your question, but I think wholeheartedly the actual ambition I have for the company, that's still there. That's never left. You ask my wife, who's been with me throughout, she'll tell you that I get up with a spring in my step now, which is actually I must love punishment, really, mustn't I? I get up and I was excited today as I was back when I started, right? And that's that I'm delighted with, because I think the minute you don't have that feeling, you can have rubbish days, but if you don't want to get up and give it a go, if you're not excited by what you can do, then you need to quit. You need to stop. And I've never, ever, ever felt like that. I've always managed to so I can see this now because we're after 15 years of being here. The competitors and the people I started with 15 years ago, they're all pretty much gone or much smaller than they were, or nothing like the force that they were. We're one of the few people that are still standing, and that's because I've had to evolve. I've had to change the business, and this will be like the third reskinning of the business that we've done. If you'd have asked me 5-6 years ago, would you have a podcast studio in your office? I go, you are mad. Now it seems like a great idea. It makes complete sense, and we can monetize that. And why didn't I do it earlier? But that's how you evolve. You evolve with times. You evolve. Technology gives you new ideas, and some people choose to ignore them, put them in a closet, and think that it's not appropriate to them. I choose to embrace as much as I can, and some work and some don't.
Okay, so for people just starting out in recruitment, what advice would you give them?
So this will be an interesting answer. So I think you've got to, and I say this because I think a lot of people now coming into recruitment forget that it is an incredibly technical sales job. Like, that's if you're working on the client-facing roles, because you've got to convince someone who's might be a bit more experienced than you, that the job that you've got, that is going to radically change their life, is going to be much better for them. Now, if you just think about that, and that's a really tough thing to do, isn't it? Mm. That's, and a lot of the times in recruitment, you've got to not just relying on people that reply to adverts, you've also got to convince people that may not even be looking, that the opportunity that you have is going to be better for them. So that's an incredibly technical sales job. And once you convince them that job might be better, you've then got to hold their hand and get them the salary that they want, get all the different things. There's so many different moving parts to that. And you've got to take them to the front door and make sure they start quite often before you get paid. That's a really tough sales job. On top of that, you've also got to understand tools, systems, technology. Make sure you've got your head around that. Make sure you can find people quickly, make sure you can be incredibly organized, understand how to use that, and then throw on top of that the fact that it's insanely competitive. And if you don't do that fast and diligently, that someone else will. I think it's a really tough job. I think if you're going to get into recruitment, be prepared to have a real rough ride. But as with anything that's a rough ride, the rewards are fantastic if you're good at it. You know, I saw the stats that say the recruitment industry on LinkedIn has dropped by 11% in the UK. That's quite sizable since in the past year. And that's because a lot of people post-COVID found it very easy. You could basically pick up a job order from anywhere. You know, there was everyone was looking for people, and people were just like, they didn't even care if they were that good. They were just hired someone. They needed bodies. Now it's gone back to how it used to be, which is really hard. And a lot of people are finding the fact that it's really hard. They're going, oh, you know what? This isn't really what I thought it was, et cetera, et cetera. So they're leaving. People are, in all walks of life, I find, and especially in business, you can see that. People find being consistent very hard. And what I mean by that is, if you in recruitment and you face rejection, which a lot of people do, if you find this candidate and he decides, you take him through the interview process and he decides not to take the job, and that could be worth quite a lot of money for you. That really hurts. Then that happens again, and that happens again. That happens again. And I know this happens to quite a few people. They'll have 3 or 4 times someone's going to say no to them. That hits you really, really hard, right? And it takes a certain someone who's able to take that bad news, who's able to take that pain and keep going and do the same thing and learn from it, but keep showing up, keep showing up, keep showing up. And very few people I've learned in business, and this is going back to this resilience that I've had, is that very few people show up again and again and again after getting bad news. Quite often they give up, right? It's like podcasting, what we're doing now. I think they say that if you do more than 25 shows, is it something like you're in the top 5% in the world, right? People give up. But if ever there's a stat that shows how weak most people are, it's that. And if you're not persistent, if you're not able to show up, you're never going to be a good recruiter. And I think it's a really, really hard job. And I respect anyone that does well in it and has spent some time in it, because it means they've certainly learned how to deal with rejection. It means that they can show up, and it means that they're actually really probably bloody good as well. So, yeah, that was a long answer to your question.
So would you say that, like, what is another mistake that recruitment agencies do other than like not being resilient?
The ones that I've seen, I can only speak for the ones I've seen come and go, right? Mm-hmm. They don't have a good client base. They don't have a diverse, good client base. They don't have enough knowledge and skills about the area that they're working in. They try and be a bit of a jack of all trades. Like in recruitment, you need to have an identity. So we have a brand identity that says we are a specialist in X. You need to make sure, and this is what I teach people in the program, you need to be the person, the famous person in your industry. And you need to work on, understand that as much as you possibly can and be known as the go-to person in that space. Don't try and be all things to all people. So if you're going to start in recruitment, get your niche, understand what it is and be the absolute expert in it. And then build your personal brand and your company brand around that. If that's where you start, number one, then you've got to understand who all your potential customers can be in that. Okay. And once you know who they can be, and you diligently go after them, and you promote yourself and you become famous in that space, then you'll be a really good recruiter. But you've got to put the groundwork in. Where I see so many people fail is they don't learn how to recruit. They don't learn how to headhunt people. They don't learn much about their sector. They try and fake it till they make it. That is a problem these days. A lot of people try and fake it till they make it. And in recruitment, you have got zero chance of success unless you put in the groundwork.
So we're going to go a bit back. So you have a program, 7 figures. What do you teach in it? What is it about? Who does it target?
What I teach people is essentially everything that I've learned in business. And I believe that you can recruitment can give you a lovely life. If you've got the good foundation there, if you're if you've got a good niche, you're a good, proven good recruiter, you understand what you need to do to place people, you've got the foundations there, I can help someone build a really successful business. And I can put all the tools, implementation, and setup that I've got into my business into theirs. And therefore, I can help them become faster, much quicker. Well, it's a very simple, like the way I look at, I've had mentors, I've always had coaches for years. I've spent a lot of money on coaches. And some people think I'm a bit mad for the amount of money I've spent on coaches because they think, oh, don't you, well, you're already doing all right. Why would you do that? Well, because I want to get better is the answer to that. It's very logical. And if there's, as you get better in business, you start to look at people who are better than you and you go, right, how do I get what they've got? And it's a very simple way I look at it. I just go and ask those people who are doing better than me if they can teach me how they got better than me, right? And that served me pretty well. So what I would say to anyone who wants to join our program or when they're in our program is, look, this is what we do. We do pretty well out of it. Listen to what I say, follow the blueprint, and surprise, surprise, you'll do pretty well as well. And it'll give someone a lovely life, and it will make use of tools, systems, and all the amazing things that are available to you now. And you'll just learn it very quickly. And if you get a mentor, and if you get an advisor on board, the reality is you'll just fast forward your learning. And you fast forward your learning, it means you get more money quicker. It means you've got a nice, I think my things that drive me, I want time freedom, location freedom, financial freedom. Notice I did it in that order, by the way. But the financial plays a key part because actually it gives you the ability to make quite a lot of those choices. All right. But the thing I love the most, and this is because I'm getting a bit older, is the fact that I've got, I'm conscious that my time is, of extreme value to me. I love traveling the world. I love being in different places. That's really important to me. And again, I would sort of think places I want to see and go to with my family before my kids think I'm the seriously uncool and don't want to hang around me anymore. But I can't do any of that stuff without financial freedom, without having money behind it. So that's what drives me. That's what motivates me. And I try and teach everything I've learned from all the years to them. I think not only is it about implementing the tools, systems, and processes, but it's a mindset job as well, because you've got to, in order to grow a business, in order to stay in business, you have to be wired a certain way, and you have to think a certain way. And I teach people how I think, and I just show people some of the practical guides that I've done over the years to survive downward spirals and crashes and nearly going bust and stuff like that. And that helps people a lot, because weirdly enough, I find that people are most engaged talking to you when you tell them about all the bad stuff. They're like, whoa, and I think they feel a degree of reassurance that you've been through it as well.
No, it does, because I feel like people want to know, basically like a phoenix, So you've been through bad stuff, and then you came out doing perfectly fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, it makes people more.
Yeah, I think so. And I think that's what Instagram reels don't really show, is it? You can, I'm always conscious that I want to tell people that I didn't, this wasn't gifted to me or anything like that. Most people show you what they've got at the end of the pot of honey at the end of the pot of gold, sorry, at the end of the rainbow. They don't show you how they got there. And I think they need to do that. People need to be a lot more real, because that's a lot more relatable and authentic.
So, this is a question for me.
Okay.
So MCG, you said you have to pick a specific, basically target audience, someone you're gonna be targeting as a recruitment agency. So who does MCG target?
So unsurprisingly, I think I told you before, my background was I was looking for a job when I was coming out of the creative marketing and digital world, right? So we go for people. So we stayed, that industry has remained in my blood for a very, very long time now. And actually, I really enjoy it. I'm super passionate about it. The thing that I love the most, probably say, is I love marketing. I always look, when there's a problem, I look at how we can solve that problem with marketing, right? And I think we've done pretty well, because I'm enthused and passionate about that industry. I'm interested in it. So that naturally is our niche. And it could be for some people, it could be they love construction. They love lawyers. They love knitting. I know, whatever, right? And that can be their niche, and they can be really good and a famous person in that space. So that's what our niche has been for years. And all the people that have done well, we've had people grace the MCG offices, come in and out of the office. Some have stayed with us, some have left. The ones that have always done really, really well are the people that enjoy the industry, that are passionate about it. And they tell this story a lot. But you haven't heard it, so you won't mind me repeating it. But my third employee was a guy who couldn't speak English, but had a real passion for creativity. And now he was referred to me by a creative director I placed, and he said this guy was a wealth manager working for Barclays Bank in Lisbon, and he moved to Dubai looking for a job. And this is I was a bit nervous. This is in the early days. I'd only ever employed one person before that, and I knew his mum. So that wasn't really a big interview. I didn't really give him an interview. This was the first proper interview I gave someone to work for us. And I met this guy, and I spoke so much at him that I didn't bother to really listen to if he spoke English that well. And so I got about 45 minutes into the interview, and I realized I just spoke at this guy the whole time. And then I went, "Oh, tell me about yourself." And I realized he couldn't speak English. And all he said was, "When do I start?"
And did he start?
Yeah. And I was like, "Oh, right. How's your English?" And he was like, "Oh." I went, "Oh, cool." Anyway, what I did ascertain from talking to the person that referred him, and kind of from him, was that he was extremely bored in his job with Barclays and really wanted to get into the creative industry, didn't know how. So I said, "Well, look, here's the deal. If you can help me place creative people, you can identify what good work is, and you can learn English in 3 months, you've got a job." And this guy ended up becoming our most successful person for like 2 years in a row, because he loved what he did. He became very famous here. We also got very lucky. It was a time when Latin America all of a sudden became very famous for its creatives, and Brazil especially. This guy was from Portugal, spoke fluent Portuguese. It was like the gods had spoken to me, right? So we were bringing over waves of Brazilians, pretty much because I had this Portuguese speaker working for me as well. So call it fate, call it what you will, but that, I hope, shows that if you are passionate about something and you're willing to work hard, and this guy couldn't even speak English, then you can do really well in this industry. And he just followed what I said, and it was perfect because he was enthusiastic as well. So it all worked. And then actually worked so well that I made a point that pretty much everyone I hired after that for a certain period, I didn't want anyone with recruitment experience. I wanted to train them up. So my first 8 employees, none of them, I brought them up from all different parts of the world. One of the guys from Honduras, where I'd lived, I called him up, this guy called Juan Diego, who now lives in Singapore. He moved out with us to Singapore, and he now lives there with his family. I called him up and I said, "You ever heard of recruitment?" He was like, "What?" I said, "Well, look, I'm onto something in the Middle East. I know you wanted to get out of Honduras. Do you fancy coming and joining me over here? And this is what it is." And at the time he was working, man, I think he'd done like a business studies degree in Honduras. He was doing some he was bored senseless, doing some political study in Honduras. Anyway, he came over. I flew him over with his wife, and he became our head of media. And he did very well. So well that he became, we then moved him to Singapore. And he was like our GM at Singapore. And then he's gone on to do a few other things. But, he's done very well. And he got out of Honduras. He's got 2 boys now, lives in Singapore. It changed his life. So, it has the nice thing, I can look back on that now and go, it's not just changed my life, but I know it's had a really big positive impact on quite a few other people's lives as well. And I really I'm looking back at it now, we had a really good tight unit at the beginning. We had like a startup mentality with all this motley crew of my mum's friend's son, Francisco, who didn't speak English, Juan Diego, who'd moved over from Honduras, the receptionist, that was it. The other employee we got was a lady called Victoria, and she was the receptionist at this co-working space that I briefly worked in. And I really liked the way she answered the phone. She was good fun. So I thought, right, I offered her a job and she came to join. She did really, really well. It was all different walks of life. And they just followed my blueprint I taught them. And it worked. And in some ways, I think the sad thing is when I started getting more successful, I changed our recruitment strategy. I felt like, and this is a bit of imposter syndrome I got as a young recruitment entrepreneur then. By the way, I'm realizing this a lot this while I'm speaking to you as well. Is that I thought, oh my God, we're doing quite well. Like we had like, $1 million and we were doing, I was like, shit, how have we done that? That's a lot of money. How did we do it with these people? Everything felt a surprise. And I then thought, oh my God, I need some proper people in. And of course I had proper people, but it didn't really, I felt like I'd put these guys together. I thought, I haven't got anyone with recruitment experience. So I started hiring people with recruitment experience. And weirdly enough, that is when I had one of the worst periods of hiring. Because I started bringing people in I hired them thinking they were going to be as better than in some weird way. I thought they'd bring professionalism in. And of course, they weren't. They actually were failures, and they weren't as good as the people I'd had there. And it changed the dynamic. And some of the people weren't happy with people I brought in. And then you learn a big lesson about a culture and how important it is to keep that culture.
So that brings me to my question here about culture. So how do you make sure the company culture stays consistent?
That's a really good question, and one that I am forever working on. And you've got your people are the most important part of your culture. Now, we've recently had a situation where I've had to make changes in the business based on people because it's reminded me of how important that is, because the atmosphere in our office wasn't as energetic and lively. I look back on that times I've just told you. I remember what people used to love coming into our office was all the laughter, all the things the vibe, the energy that it created. And when I then changed it and put these recruiters in, and the vibe changed, I had a couple of people that were toxic. It really harmed our culture. And what happened is your good people start to leave. The toxic ones, they tend to stay, actually. That's a really annoying thing. The ones that are changing, they stay. And so you've got to, if it's important, if culture really means something for you, you've got to protect that. You've got to really hold on to it as long as you possibly can, save it, because your business, if it's a service business, that's all the pillars and foundations of your business are based on your people and the culture and the vision that you bring into the office. And if you haven't got that, if you've got a few rotten eggs that are ruining it, then you've got to deal with that quickly. So what was the question again? Am I answering that? I'm waffling off. No, I think for me, culture is absolutely imperative. It is the heartbeat of the business, and the people that I have in here need to be an absolute reflection of who we are, what we stand for. And I'm recently reminded of how important that is. And new people that we brought in have reminded me how much difference they can make to the office as well. And ultimately, you spend a lot of time. You've got to remember, when you you spend as much time with these people, be it if you work remote or in an office, whatever, interacting with these people, than you do with your family most of the time. You've got to like them, right? You've got to want to spend time with them. And sometimes people forget that. I've forgotten that even. I've been so obsessed with the mission that I haven't paid enough attention sometimes to the culture. And when we're struggling to get there, I just sometimes, I have been, even recently, I've just stared at the numbers and the process and haven't thought about what actually people are in an environment that they love, people in an environment that they enjoy working in, they're far more likely to work hard for you than they are in a place that brings them down, where they just don't feel motivated and inspired by those around them. So it is so important that you get that right in a service business. The reason I say service business is because, and do you want me to explain what I mean by service business?
Of course.
Yeah. So service business is essentially where you sell your time for money. So your people are your product, right? So advertising companies, PR companies, recruitment businesses, what they sell is their expertise and the time that they invest into a project, right? So they put a price point on their time, and then there's a cost at the end of it based on what they think that value is. A product business is something different. It is where you literally have, there's that vase, and I sell that vase for a certain amount of money. That's a product business. A lot of digital businesses are a product business. If you want to a subscription model is a product business, okay? Because you're buying access to that product for a certain amount of money. A service business is where you sell your time for money. So when you're selling your time for money and it's based on your people, they are your product. So your culture, aside from the service that you're selling and the expertise that you're bringing, the culture and how you keep everyone together is imperative. Because if the company's working with you and the people that they are dealing with changes every 3 to 6 months, well, they're going to start thinking, well, what the hell's going on there? And actually, they quite enjoy dealing with that person. And they might even leave you as a customer because they might go and join them, the next person they go to. So you want the best businesses, the most successful service businesses are ones where they have expertise and they're very well known in the subject, but they have really good people affiliated to them and people that stay there a long time. Businesses that lose headcount all the time, they yo-yo, they don't make any money, and they eventually wither and fizzle up and die.
So what qualities do you think are essential in today's business leaders?
In today's business leaders?
Yeah.
I think, look, people want to work for someone that they feel inspired by. I think you have to take on that responsibility. You have to conduct yourself in a way where you have people have to look at you and think, you know what? I think the way this man or woman lead their life, I think that's admirable. I think I'd like to, I respect that person. I think it's how you behave for me, how I behave inside of work and outside of work are of equal importance. Because look, if I was great here, if Sarah saw me in here and I was, fantastic in work and inspiring leader, made loads of sales, etc. But then outside of work, I was an alcoholic who cheated on his wife, spoke badly to people and didn't have share. It was just a complete mess, basically, outside of work. Inevitably, people wouldn't want to work for me, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you have to be reminded of that. You have to be someone that people look up to and respect. And I've worked for bosses who I looked up to and respect in work and thought, my God, what a shambles they're outside of. And I ended up, I ended up losing respect for them. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I didn't want to be anything like them, right? So you've got to be someone that people want to look up to, that holds themselves in, true to a high standard. And I think you've got to be someone. If you say you're going to do something, you've got to stick to it. You've got to, if you've got to commit to it, and if you don't, people will just lose respect for you. I think you've got to have a track record as well. You can't. A lot of people think they can become an overnight success, and that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen at all. So, I truly think experience and values and being respectful, admire, whatever the word is I'm trying to think of. Those are things that are really important. And don't fake it. Don't be authentic. That's the other thing. That's a really important thing that I don't think a lot of leaders are afraid to show who they are. Right. And I would say in the early stages of running a business, when I was the guy that I was telling you about before, when I was ruled by fear a bit, I felt this weird way that I had to show that everything was perfect, that I didn't make mistakes. And anyone called me out mistakes, I'd be like, whoa, I think now I am, or I hope I am, because Sarah's in the room. She can tell you if I'm not otherwise. Hopefully I will say if I've made a mistake. Hopefully I'll not be afraid to put my hand up if things go wrong. And I am authentic. I try and be who I am in work as I am outside of work. And I don't try and pretend to be someone I'm not. And I know a lot of leaders who still find that really, really hard. Really hard. And you can see they sort of seize up when they're in environments which they kind of feel that they're being taken out of their comfort zone. And I think hopefully that's something I've learned to be quite comfortable with. There's a real fine line in everything I've said, by the way, because you don't want to be, you want to be authentic and be able to be with everyone, but you also don't want to be the last one standing at the bar, right? Dribbling out the corner of your mouth. And, you want to be fun, but not too much fun. You want to, you want to get on with everyone, everyone see your friendly side. But what I've also learned is not a lot of people are feel that relaxed sometimes in my presence. And you've got to expect that and appreciate that and understand that. There you go. I'm waffling, but
so I'll give you a fun question. If you were stranded on a deserted island, what 3 things would you want to have with you?
Am I clothed? I mean, what is it?
Let's say you are.
Okay, cool. I was going to say that would be quite good. Right. Okay. Stranded on desert island, like Castaway style. I would definitely like a spear because that's very handy. Then I can eat. I definitely like some music because that makes any situation bearable. It's true. It's true, right?
True.
How deserted is this island?
Like, what do you mean by how deserted?
Is there any plants on it?
Yeah. It's not just sand.
It's not just sand.
Yeah.
Then I would love to be blessed with the ability to make a raft or something like that. So I'd like to.
With a spear?
No, I've got to eat, man. I've got to eat, listen to music, and I got to build stuff. All right. Got to keep myself busy. Everyone says to me, Justin, you are never ever going to retire because you will just go out of your mind. And the thought of being deserted on an island with nothing to do is already making me get the heebie-jeebies. So I've got to have something to do. All right.
Okay.
And that would be, building a raft or something along those lines. I would need to keep myself busy, or I'd start digging.
Going down. Okay. If you could master any skill instantly, what would it be?
Singing. I would love to sing. I am so bad at it. In a weird way, when I'm out running, doing the gym sometimes or on my own, I sort of have this daydream that I'm a really good singer. Because I think I'd be quite good at entertaining people if I could sing. And I was gutted that I got absolute rubbish singing voice. My son's got quite a good singing voice, actually. I don't know where he gets that from. I'm actually quite jealous of him for that. So I would love to be able to sing. I think if you're a good singer, that can open up a lot of doors, right? That is a good talent to have. So there you go. Singing.
I feel like you have the voice for like narration. So I can like imagine you in like...
Imagine if I could narrate and sing. Wow. Wow.
So do you have a nickname? A couple?
Yeah, I've had a few, but never actually. Most of my nicknames have been a bit rubbish. Actually, they've been. They used to call me when I used to play a lot of rugby. They used to call me Spikos, which I think I now is a bit cruel, actually. And
what does that mean?
It's naming me after it's a Greek name. Everyone used to think I was Greek. When I was in Greece recently, everyone thought I was Greek as well. So people used to call me Spikos. People used to call me a couple of other things, but I don't think we're going to talk about that. That's a bit rude. So as I've got older, I haven't really, when you become a boss, people, I think maybe Sarah can tell you what a few people call me behind my back. But yeah, most people know me by my initials now or something like JM and stuff like that. It's a bit boring. Yeah, it's a bit boring.
Okay. If you could have a dinner with any 3 celebrities that are alive, who would they be?
That are alive?
That are alive.
Or dead?
Mm-hmm.
Alive or dead? Winston Churchill. I think that would be a fascinating. Do you know who he is? My gosh. So he was. Is
he dead?
Yeah, he died a long time ago. So he was Prime Minister of Britain during the war. Very famous guy. He used to smoke a big cigar, love a whiskey. A real character. I'd love to just sit and listen to him narrate stories about all sorts of things. About I get this weird interest, and it's not weird, I suppose, but I've got this. Not many people know this. Love history, so particularly Second World War history. I'm really into it. I don't know why. I think I actually do know why. It's because my grandfather was in the desert during the war. My grandfather had this scar on his arm here. It was like this barbed wire where he was made to sort of run through barbed wire and stuff. But he had these endless stories, amazing war stories. I used to sit there and just, wow, listen to them. So definitely Winston Churchill, because I'd love to hear all his war stories. I would love, I used to idolize Sean Connery. And then I met him in space. They should say you should never meet the people you idolize. Do you know who Sean Connery is? Okay. He was the first James Bond, right?
Okay.
And my dad ended up playing golf with him, and I ended up like carrying the clubs. And he was so rude. He just swore the whole time. He was really grumpy, but apparently he was on an off day. And I'd quite like to meet him now as an adult and like listen to a lot of his stories about James Bond and back in the day. I think I'm quite fascinated by that sort of 60s film movie period as well. That would be very interesting. Who else would I love to have dinner with? I really think Brad Pitt is the coolest dude going as well.
Finally, someone I know.
I'd love to spend some time with him and get to know him. And I understand why he looks so bloody good at 62. Like, what are the man's secrets? I need to know that stuff before I'm getting to that age, right? So I'd love to get some tips from him, and also I just think he's just quite a fascinating character who manages to reinvent himself every decade. So that would be quite interesting. I'm a few, as you can see, I like older, interesting people. I think if you'd have asked me maybe 20 years ago, probably been a different response. And I'll tell you someone else I'd quite like to have got to know, and you probably don't know who he is, but I'd quite like to sit down with Kurt Cobain, because I've read a book about him and watched a couple of documentaries. He sounds like a very interesting character. Do you know who he is? He was the lead singer of Nirvana. He shot himself. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. But really interesting, like super interesting guy, and saying people who normally leave the world soon normally are there, aren't they? Sportsman's wise, I was very lucky in my job when I was in advertising. I was really into sport. I used to meet a lot of people. Like, they used to always come in and out all the time of the studios that we had. So I met Ronaldo doing that a couple of times, actually. All the Manchester United football players, all the people I was idolized. I got to meet all them, and they were they were a bit boring. They weren't. Again, you shouldn't really meet your idol. Maybe they didn't want to talk to me, and fair enough. Why would you want to talk to me as well? So I don't really think sports folks I'm not that blown away by. Except for Ayrton Senna. Do you know who he is?
No.
Yeah, very famous Brazilian F1 driver. Do you know who he is? Ayrton Senna. My God, there's a documentary made about him. He's could be one of the greatest racing drivers ever. Very, very amazing life.
Is he the guy that the car blew up?
He died in a car crash. Yeah.
I know about him.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. His documentary won an Oscar and stuff. It's phenomenal. That's more than 3. We can have a round table discussion. Yeah.
A full table.
Yeah, a full table. I actually think that sport transfers a lot into business as well. People who work with me will hear me talk about the way I think sports psychology and business psychology are completely interlinked. So I would actually probably Alex Ferguson. Do you know who he is? He's a great football manager. I'd quite like to listen to what he's got to say. So him and Winston Churchill, wow, what a pairing they would be. That'd be phenomenal, wouldn't it? Phenomenal. He's Scottish, that's why. So,
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you, Justin, for the great talk. And thank you for sharing your immense wisdom.
Oh, stop it.
No, honestly, it was a great talk. And I feel like we've got to know MCG a lot more. We've got to know you a lot more as the CEO and as a person in general. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. It was lovely. It was fun to talk. Let's do it again.
We should.